They get together here on Birds 365 with Mac and Mac, John McMullen Jody McDonald. We are joined by one Ed Kracz, Eagle Maven from Sports Illustrated. My question is to you, Mr. Kracz, and if not, John McMullen can answer. Have you, as the representatives of Sports Illustrated, cut a side deal with maybe, I don't know, John Clark to monitor the Eagles home base to see if Odell Beckham shows up for a workout? Because somebody's got to catch him walking into the building, and Clark is the best at finding out airport trips and the like. You guys are both on the show right here. Who from Sports Illustrated is making sure Odell Beckham doesn't show up for a workout this morning?
Nick Sirianni would be my answer. Yeah, he doesn't.
Oh, Nick's going to tell one of you two guys after.
No, he just does.
Yes, we had Odell in.
No, he has no interest from it. From the outside looking in. Ed, you get a different take from the head coach of this team?
No, I mean, he talked yesterday about how much this is probably the best wide receiver room he's been around. And Quez Watkins seemed to be okay. Now, listen, if Quez was bothered by, I think it was a chest that he hurt.
Shoulder,
upper body.
Upper body.
Yeah, let's go hockey.
But if he seemed okay in the locker room yesterday, moving okay, putting his shirt on fine. If he was a little bit more, severe of an injury, then maybe they look at Odell. But if you're going to go stake out the airport, a la John Clark, you better bring a good book because you're going to be there a while.
Yeah, when I saw it was Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk who kind of put that out there. The first thing I thought was, hey, Howie's trying to tweak the Giants or Dallas to pay Odell a little bit more money, maybe tweak him in that fashion. One of the things that Nick said that I think people don't realize, and especially with this team, it's very important because until the Tennessee game, they had been very poor on special teams. If you're going to be a back-end receiver on the roster, you have to play special teams. He brought that up again. And Odell Beckham isn't coming in here to play special teams. Quez Watkins can't play special teams. So you need the Zach Pascals and Britton Coveys of the world. And I think people just want to collect good players and say, oh, that's a record, but he was a Pro Bowler 5 years ago, whatever it was. I don't think they realize the science. And not everybody, but a lot of people don't realize the science to building an NFL roster. Is that fair?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he's not going to play special teams. He's not going to be a savior no matter where he goes. I mean, I think I heard yesterday that it's going to take him a good 5 weeks to be ready to play in football shape and this and that. So you're not looking at any help from Odell, if at all, until the playoffs. And maybe he helps you a little bit. I think I know he wants another ring, but you wonder if whoever signs him is going to have to sign him to more than 1 year because his impact is going to be very limited this season. You're going to have to probably carry him into next year as well. And I don't think the Eagles have that kind of salary cap to throw away on a receiver that, you've got guys already signed in that room for a few more years yet, other than Zach Pascal, who signed a 1-year deal. But I just don't see them doing it. They don't have a lot of money under the cap to do it. It would be cool to get Odell, right, to keep him away from the New York Giants and the Dallas Cowboys potentially. If you're the Eagles, maybe you do it for that reason. But as far as on the field contributions, I don't think he would help much at all.
All right, so the three of us agree. Chances are Odell Beckham Jr. not coming here, despite rumor central. But a guy who looks like he could be back this week is Devonta Maddox. Eagles opened up the practice window for him. He's eligible to come back. He could return this week. It would be a nice re-addition to the team. Josiah Scott has played well enough. Yeah, he hasn't wowed me, but he hasn't been bad where, oh, my God, when are we going to get Devonta Maddox back? He's held it down. Does he factor in when Maddox is back, and if he's playing all the snaps that he usually plays, does Scott factor into the safety position now? Because they've cross-trained him. He's played both safety and nickel corner and even some outside corner. Or does Josiah Scott go back to being just a special teams player?
Yeah, we'll see how much Maddox can play on Sunday. I guess he has to test it on Thursday and Friday. Yesterday on Wednesday was a walkthrough, and we talked to him in the locker room yesterday, and he said it's all about reacting and making cuts. When you don't know you have to make cuts, it's an uncontrolled environment when you're out there in practice going through the live drills as opposed to individual drills where you know exactly where you have to be. So he wants to test it, and we'll see how that hamstring is. Hamstrings are a pretty tricky thing to know whether or not you're ready to return from. So I'm not 100% convinced he's going to be playing on Sunday. I think
Really?
If he does, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, he's got to get through today and Friday. He might very well do that, and he might play Sunday. But I think if he does, it's going to maybe be in a limited few limited snaps. They really took it easy with Jordan Davis when he returned. He only played 6 snaps, and he was limping around a little bit out there. So, you don't want that with Devonta Maddox, but you may take it a little bit easier with him, and Josiah Scott may still see some reps. Maybe they.
So today, Eddie
I
freeze
got
up on it?
I got an Ed Kracz freeze up. Do you have an Ed Kracz freeze up? I never know if it's me. That's the problem with streaming.
Exactly. You don't
never
know
know.
for sure.
Yeah.
Just-
I don't know. My
all
back.
right, there you go, Ed. We got you
There we
again.
go.
So
Good.
you're
Am I
not,
frozen?
you're unfrozen. Yes. So you're not
Good. Yeah,
sure.
I turned the heat up a little bit. Turn the heat up a little
It's
bit
chilly.
here.
It's
Yeah,
chilly. It's kind of nice. It's not bad. But, Jody mentioned safety, Ed, so I'll go there.
Yeah.
You're right. Hamstrings are tricky, especially for pass guys, and Devonta's a pass guy. So that's, you got to be careful. But as far as Josiah moving the safety, if Devonta's, 100% even, boy, I don't know if he can take Reed Blankenship off the field. I can't believe I'm saying this sentence, but he has been amazing. Now, part of that is Tennessee doesn't pass the ball well, and they lost Traylon Burks in the game. They did get him deep, and he was injured on that play. And then they completely shut down the passing game. So they don't have a lot of weapons. Green Bay, you think, well, Aaron Rodgers, but he doesn't trust his receivers. They don't have a lot of weapons. The one mistake he did make was taking the wrong angle on Christian Watson. And now we get to this Giants game, and they don't have a lot of weapons. So is it Reed playing that well, or is it just they got a little bit lucky with the schedule as far as they haven't had teams who could take advantage of having a Reed Blankenship on the field?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a little of both. I mean, I think he can play. He's very good at diagnosing things that are happening in front of him and then getting there, as you'd expect. I mean, he was a starter for 5 years at Middle Tennessee State. He's seen a lot of offense thrown at him. So I like that part of it. But, yeah, he hasn't really been challenged. He wasn't challenged against the Titans, but yet he played 100% of the snaps. He was the only Eagles defensive player to play every single snap. I think there were 55 of them on defense. If nothing else, I mean, at least that helps get him kind of into the flow of things, gets him feeling really confident about himself, and that can take you a pretty good way. Josiah Scott on the back end, maybe in a pinch, if guys are starting to drop. I mean, they kind of they cut Andre Chachere, right? So they're a little bit thinner at the safety spot. So yeah, if you're in a pinch, Josiah Scott may have to go back there for a few snaps. But I don't know how successful that cross training was between slot and safety. And I'm not sure the Eagles really want to find out. So they're going to stick with Blankenship until Gardner Johnson's ready to go.
All right, Eddie, I need your answer on this one. On the fear factor scale from 0 to 10, 0 being, I laugh at your question, McDonald, 10 being, yes,
he's laughing already. I'm going to go.
I think I
he's
actually
laughing already.
10 fear being, I think I actually wet myself. Daniel Jones running the football this week against the Eagles defense. Where does your fear factor of that fall between 0 and 10?
10 is wet myself.
Exactly.
Well, I'm not going to wet myself. I'm not there yet. I'm not that old. But But I'll probably say middle of that scale somewhere, maybe a 5. Jones has run on this team before. I mean, remember that big, long 81-yard run or whatever it was, and he tripped, or he would have scored a touchdown. Just tripped on his own on the turf. But yeah, that's one weapon that Jones brings, is that ability to run. And the Eagles haven't seen a quarterback like that, I think, since Kyler Murray when they went out to Arizona, a quarterback who can keep plays alive, who can scramble. Now, Ryan Tannehill did some of that, right? I mean, he picked up pretty good chunks on 3 runs. He had more yards rushing than Derrick Henry had, which was weird. Yeah. But I mean, listen, if they're not disciplined in their pass rush lanes and this and that, all the coach speak you want to throw, then yeah, Jones can hurt them with his legs. There's no question. And especially on a team that really is devoid of wide receiver weapons, like John mentioned earlier. You have Saquon, who has kind of tailed off a little bit in the run game, but still very, very dangerous. And that's what they're going to try to do. But yeah, Jones can keep plays alive with his feet. I'm not going to wet myself, but I'm not going to laugh at you either, Jody. I'll go.
Okay.
5.
Yeah, going to go 5. Yeah, nice. Yeah. I don't think he's not. We always talk about Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, now Jalen Hurts, even Josh Allen. He's not those guys, but he's that next tier when it comes to running the football. And I do think that he's far more athletic than what people realize. As you mentioned, that big run he had at Lincoln Financial Field. Everybody makes fun of him, but you had to get to, run it that far before you trip over yourself. So that tells you how athletic he is. But I got to tell you, Ed, when we're talking about the quarterback, unless it's Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts, I'm not going to wet myself to worry about Daniel Jones running the football. That kind of tells you what the Giants are up against it. I think Brian Daboll has done a tremendous job with that team, but they just don't have the talent to match up with the Eagles. Is that how you look at this game?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought that coming into the season. I mean, they're cutting guys to get under the salary cap. That's how James Bradbury ended up here in Philadelphia. So you thought, this looks like a year where the Giants are they understand what they are, and they're going to go out and probably win 5 games. And then they get off to this, really surprising 6-1 start. But now things have kind of balanced out a little bit, and I think they've lost or tied 4 of their last 5 games. But, they always play the Eagles tough. There's, no matter who the coach is, Joe Judge or whoever, the Eagles went up there and lost 13-7 last year. And they're going to
worst game of Jalen Hurts' starting career, I would say. It was that game at MetLife Stadium.
Scored 7 points. They threw 3 interceptions, including one right before halftime, a very bad decision when it looks like they're going to go in and tie the game up at halftime. But and the Giants are going to hit him. Their defense is very physical. They have a very good front.
Yeah,
and they're going to
blitz. They're going to blitz. They're going to blitz.
And but listen, they can be run on too. I mean, this could be a game where the Eagles try to run the ball like they did against Tennessee, against Green Bay, and some of these other teams they played, because the Giants' run defense isn't as good as you think. Their linebacker play isn't as good. I think they cut Blake Martinez, or maybe he got hurt.
He got hurt, and then ultimately he was a good player, but something's going on because he's been cut.
But the Giants, they got off to a really good start, which was surprising to everyone, because it looked like they were just going to be a 5-win team somewhere in that range and gear up for next year and make a good run. But Daniel Jones has played better, and you have to give Daboll and Mike Kafka and Wink Martindale, their defensive coordinator, a lot of credit for the wins that they've been able to get out of this team so far.
Oh, by the way, that Jalen Hurts' worst game of his career against the Giants last year, if Jalen Reagor catches a catchable ball in the end zone, they could have won that game, and we wouldn't be talking about it as the worst game of Jalen's career. But speaking of Jalen Reagor, he's part of what has turned into the revenge tour season for the Eagles. Week 2, the Eagles beat him and the Vikings. They beat up on poor Carson Wentz, 8 sacks. Nick Sirianni got a little Indy revenge a couple of weeks ago, and we all saw what A.J. Brown did to the Titans this week. You mentioned James Bradbury, who was a Giant last year, wasn't traded, wasn't a free. They cut him to make him available so he could come down here and sign with Philadelphia and play on a Pro Bowl type level. you can't do as much at the cornerback position, can you, to get your revenge? If they don't throw at you, they don't throw at you. You don't think the Giants would specifically throw at Slay to stay away from Bradbury, do you? How do you think Bradbury plays against his former mates this weekend?
Well, I'm of the belief that you shouldn't fear anybody if you're an offense. I mean, I would attack anybody out there. I don't care who it is. I would throw their way if you have to. I'd run their way if
that's the Nick Sirianni mentality. He doesn't give a flying.
You're hanging around Sirianni too long, huh, Kracz?
Well, I'm of that mentality too. I don't, and it's born of wrestling. I like when guys wrestle one-on-one that are good guys, and you don't try to duck them and move them up a weight or down a weight to get away from a guy. Go strength on strength, see if you're better. And, we'll see. I think the Giants will throw toward Bradbury. Why not? You're going to throw to Slay or you're going to throw to Bradbury. I think they'll mix it up, and I think they'll try to use the tight end over the middle, a little bit. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Bradbury plays. He kind of downplayed it yesterday in the locker room about this return. He was a little more pragmatic, that he's at peace with them releasing him, and hey, I'm 11-1. I think I made the right decision here. So I'm not sure. At least publicly, he's not saying, "Hey, I'm really amped up for this game," like AJ Brown was to play the Titans. And we'll see what the Giants decide to do, whether they throw in his direction. Their receivers, like we talked about, aren't that threatening, to be honest. So
no,
I don't know who you're going to be throwing it to over there. But we'll see. I think Bradbury could have an interception in this game. I'll make it a prediction right now. Bradbury.
There you go.
I'll go out on the limb. Yeah.
He's going to beat Daniel Jones at some point. I'm so impressed. I'm like our buddy Bob Groats with James Bradbury. I knew he was a good player, but he's so savvy. He's so. And Jonathan Gannon mentioned this early in the week, talking about his football IQ. It's just off the charts. He almost intercepted that wide receiver screen against Tennessee. He overjumped it. He knew it was coming so quick. He overran it. He knew the football was coming. And I wrote about this on Sports Illustrated. The success he and Slay have had compared to the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. Davis Mills has the worst passer rating of the guys who play, which is about 79. And Bradbury gives up a 44 passer rating and Slay's at like 50. That's not the mean. That's better than the worst quarterback in the NFL. And the completion percentage, Mariota's the worst at 61%. Those guys are, Bradbury's under 50%, Slay's just over 50%. Those corners, when we talk about the Eagles being the second-ranked defense in the NFL, burst and turnovers, burst and pass defense, to me, the corners are the best part of that team. Is that how you've seen things?
Well, yeah. I think it kind of goes hand in hand with the pass rush. They're also able to get home and affect the quarterback, even if they don't get the sacks. But it's a defense that has 42 sacks. I think the team record is like 49, maybe. They're going to go 50 plus, I would guess, with 5 more games to go. I know you have the extra game here, but that pass rush gets a lot of credit too for what the corners are doing. Just like the corners get a lot of credit for what the pass rush is doing. I think it goes hand in hand. But
yeah, rush and cover and rush. KG.
Cover, rush. Yeah, the old Jonathan Gannon nugget. But yeah, but I think if Zach McPherson was in Bradbury's place,
I don't think it would go as well.
I don't think it would go as well either. Yeah, Bradbury's, he's really good. And, he kind of gambled on himself signing a 1-year deal. I don't know what other options he had if he had a multi-year deal elsewhere. I don't think he would, or he might have taken it, but he's signed a 1-year deal and he really reset the market here for himself. He has played himself into a pretty big contract, I think, coming up. His next deal will be a big one, even though he's going to be 30 years old next year. He showed he can still play. He's very, like you said, very savvy. He's very smart. He's good at diagnosing things. And he's good at breaking up passes without being called for pass interference. So,
yeah,
I think he's played himself into a big deal probably a bigger deal than what the Eagles will want to pay him.
Yeah, he didn't sound like he was going to be giving out any team-friendly discounts.
No, he
the
did
way
say
talked
winning's
about
a big factor
Yeah,
in the
he
equation. And if you want to win, I think the Eagles are set up to not only win this year, but, for a few years to come. If Hurts continues on that trajectory and the Roseman makes some of the right decisions in the offseason with a boatload of free agents that he has to figure out who he wants back. But winning's going to be part of his equation. It's not everything, but that will play a factor. And like he said, I'm 11-1, so he'll factor that in.
And, oh, by the way, Eagles on pace to set their all-time most ever sacks in a season. And they did so without Derek Barnett. Who'd have known?
Yeah.
And Robert Quinn for the most part.
Yeah.
How about Brandon Graham? Brandon Graham looks like he can still play, huh? I mean, he's playing
another guy they're going to have to deal with this offseason. So let me go there. Yeah, again, anytime you question anything about the 11-1 Eagles, you're going to get trashed. I'll be picked on here on the stream. Howie Roseman, Executive of the Year in the National Football League. I'm acknowledging that. Did he miss out this year by not giving a couple of extra years to guys? I'm thinking of James Bradbury and Kaiser White. I wasn't in the room when he was negotiating with their agents. I don't know how the negotiating went. There's always the possibility you do when you sign a free agent. There's no rule that says you can only give them a one-year deal. Flexibility is always nice, but it can be costly. If the guy has an unbelievable year and then goes elsewhere, and now you got to replace him again this upcoming year. How he miss out on a couple of the free agents he signed, not going multi-year with them?
Yeah, he might have, but he was looking at, the amount of money he had to spend, and he thought he was being judicious with it because you never know who's going to spring free during the course of the season. Like a Ndamukong Suh, maybe he had an eye on him from the jump and said, we got to save some money for possibly him, for possibly Linval Joseph, maybe Odell Beckham, but I doubt it. But I think what I would have done if I was Howie, and maybe he tried this, but after I trade for Gardner Johnson, now we didn't know he was going to be, this playmaking 6-interception safety, but I think after you trade for a guy, after you give up draft collateral for somebody like that, and it wasn't a lot, a 5th and a 6th, I think you try to sign him right then and there, before you know what he can become. I think you try to get a deal done with him, maybe a 3-year deal to get him in here, especially because, at safety, you got a lot of guys that are on 1-year deals here. Marcus Epps' contract is up. So, yeah, maybe he could have tried to go a little longer with a Bradbury or even a Kaiser White because he didn't know at the time that Nakobe Dean would be sitting there for them to draft.
Right.
But me personally, I would have given Chauncey Gardner-Johnson a contract the day I traded for him, kind of like he did with A.J. Brown. Now, he needed to do that with A.J. Brown or the deal wouldn't have gotten done. But I think I would have tried a little bit harder, and maybe he did. But I would have tried to get Gardner-Johnson signed because right now, he's played himself, I think, into like a $15 million a year player, Gardner-Johnson, even though he's hurt. Maybe that dents his –
he's not coming back.
Who do you think gets more on the open market? AAV, not years or with guaranteed dollars, but average annual value. Who do you think gets more, Gardner Johnson or Bradbury?
Well, position-wise, I think cornerbacks are probably viewed as, a higher value, I guess, although you're seeing safeties getting paid pretty good money. I would probably say – and Gardner Johnson's younger. So
that's a big part of it.
I mean, he's only 24, 25, Gardner Johnson. Bradbury will be 30. I mean, I would probably say Gardner Johnson then, just based on the age factor. I would probably go with Gardner Johnson. But both guys are going to cost maybe a little bit more than Howie wants to spend. What I'm really surprised at is he hasn't extended anybody here.
We bring it up no every leverage, week here on Birds 365.
He's got no leverage, man.
Week. Who's he going to get done?
When you're 11-1.
Marcus Epps. What about Marcus Epps?
Well, Marcus and TJ are the two obvious ones.
Yeah, or even Isaac Siamalo. I mean, why wouldn't you want to try to get a deal done with your guard?
They probably do, but I mean, it's tough. These guys have the most leverage they're ever going to have because everybody's agent goes in there and says, "Oh, you're 11-1. Look how good Marcus Epps is, and look how good Chauncey is. He leads the NFL in interceptions." It is bad leverage right now. Now, you never want to lose, so it's a good problem to have. But it's more difficult than last year when he was getting all those extensions done early. But you brought up Nakobe Dean. I want to talk about Nakobe because you and I talked to him yesterday, and this amazed me, Ed. He talked about how, he hasn't gotten a lot of reps and how slow he was to the football. And I'm like, the guy's out there for 15 snaps. He's got 6 tackles, and he's telling us how slow he was to the ball. He looked like the most instinctive guy in the world to me. And he's like, I was late to everything. I'm like, if this is what Nakobe, with all due respect to Kaiser White, if that little sliver is bad, Nakobe Dean, well, thanks for the memories, Kaiser, but we don't need Kaiser White. And I love Kaiser.
Yeah.
Good player, has fit in well. But, man, it's tough not to get excited after you get that one quick look at Nakobe Dean, and he's talking about, like, I wasn't myself.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing.
You're right. I mean, he said he was slow.
Yeah.
He was slow to kind of diagnose. Now, I know Jody is high on Nakobe Dean. I remember him lambasting us for our top 25 best.
Correct.
Yeah.
For
No,
not having
and it was proven
in
you
there.
guys were right. If I need to apologize for that, it was just us talking about this year.
Right.
I still stand by he's one of their best 25 players. Now, you can only judge by what he does on the field. I have my own talent evaluation meter, but you guys are right about that, to not put him in the top 25. But I'm not accepting defeat in that I'm telling you he's one of the 25 most talented players on this football team.
Yeah, well, listen, you were right about that. I mean, I had some concerns, and then you see him out there in those 15 snaps, and it's like, this guy can play. I mean, that one clip that was on Twitter of him tackling Derrick Henry with one arm while being held to the ground by one of the Titans defenders. I mean, that's a world-class play. And then he makes the play in the open field on the little throw in the flat to, I think it was a tight end. He runs right towards him and knocks him down. It was exciting to see Nakobe Dean go out there and do what he did, even though he didn't think he played all that well. He looked pretty darn good to me. And you're right. Like, Kaiser is probably one of those guys that probably won't be back. If you're prioritizing who you want to bring back, he's probably down on that list because Nakobe looks like he's ready to step in. And listen, frankly, I'm ready to see more of Nakobe Dean.
Right. So here's my question for both of you two guys. Will the defensive coordinator give him some run this week?
No.
They don't use backup
Well, if
linebackers.
Kaiser's not healthy, we got to
true.
see. If Kaiser's not healthy, he's going to play. But if Kaiser's healthy and playing, no. I mean, he's got to wait his turn.
And he was limited. Kaiser was limited at doing that walkthrough on Wednesday. We'll see how that, and it's a shoulder, I believe. So we'll see how that progresses. You need your shoulders to play linebacker, right? So, maybe they don't play Kaiser, his true amount of snaps because they're kind of bringing him along slowly. They want to monitor this injury, and maybe Nakobe does get some snaps. I would love to see it because, he looked pretty darn good to me.
Yeah, he did. But it all depends on Kaiser. Kaiser, I'm double checking. Quez was the shoulder. Kaiser's dealing with an ankle, but he was limited. And to me, it all comes down to health. If Kaiser can play, he's out there. And if not, it's a nice depth to have Nakobe. A slow to Nakobe Dean, not registering. I looked at him. I double taked. I said, "Wait, you thought you're slow because the rest of us, you look pretty instinctive." And he was like, "No." He doubled down. He was like, "No, I was slow to the football." Yeah, it was. It's pretty amazing. But that's good depth to have, to say the least.
Yeah, without question. And, he was pretty happy to be out there playing, of course. Why wouldn't you want to be? He's only gotten special teams time. He said he was tired, too, after playing those 15 snaps because he was playing 23 snaps on special teams. So that was another thing he said. I was a little tired. I need to, work on his conditioning a little bit, too. So, and he'll get there. And Jody will be right. He'll be back on our list in the top 25 Eagles
next year. I'm going to go ahead and predict for you guys again in advance next year. He will make the top 25. All right. I asked you about Daniel Jones running the football because it's a minor concern coming into the game. he actually averages more per rush than Jalen Hurts does, because Jalen gets hurt by those 1 yard gains on third down. When they need 1 yard, he pushes ahead. That brings his average rush for average per carry down. The only other thing that really scares me is the Giants actually do throw the football to the back out of the backfield, and that would be Saquon Barkley. He leads the team in receptions with 40. The Eagles don't do it near as much, so you've got to keep an eye on him coming out of the backfield. Who's going to have the game to stop him? Linebacker, safety, whatever, usually falls to one of those guys making plays on guys out of the backfield. And Barkley is one of those guys, make somebody miss, and he could be off to the races for a chunk play. Who do you think is the guy who's got most Barkley out of the backfield duties for the Eagles defense this week?
Well, I think it'll be a bunch of guys. I don't think they'll send one guy on him or keep one guy on him. I think it'll depend where he's coming out of the backfield and who's playing on that side of the field. I mean, we've seen cornerbacks come up and make plays on running backs. We've seen Bradbury come up and make plays. We've seen Epps. I think Marcus Epps is good if you play him down low, but probably more often than not, it'll be a linebacker like a TJ Edwards or a Kaiser White. That would be my guess, is one of those linebackers will probably have the duty on him, but I wouldn't say that that's going to be primarily their job. I think that will fall to others as well. And it could be a Bradbury who, Bradbury and Slave tackled very well, I thought, in the run game against Derrick Henry. They came in and filled those gaps and did a nice job tackling him. So they can certainly do it. But I don't think they would do it 100% of the time. I think it'll be a kind of a mix and match situation with Barkley. And it's interesting we're not talking about Barkley as a running back here. After what the Eagles were able to do to Henry, we're talking about Barkley out of the backfield. But, Barkley's, he can put 140 up on you if you're not tackling well or committed to the run game like the Eagles were against the Titans. So this was a big concern a couple weeks back, playing Saquon Barkley and trying to stop him from running.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be as big of a concern.
It's funny how that shifts. Last one from me, Ed. Read Ed at si.com/Eagles/NFL. Give a little shout out to Johnny Stat over at the Eagles, John Gannon. Talk about the quarterback who seems to do something historic every week now. 16 of his last 18 regular season starts, Jalen Hurts has won. So that's a full NFL season. That's 16-2. He's won 14 of 15. Highest winning percentage, obviously, amongst NFL quarterbacks over that span. This is the MVP of the league, right, Ed Kracz? There's still time, but the snapshot right now, it's got to be the MVP of the league.
Yeah, I wrote about it. He's my leader in the clubhouse. If you would ask me last week or 2 weeks ago, I would have said Mahomes. I mean, Mahomes, he gets the numbers, right? He's the traditional numbers collecting quarterback with the yards. He's almost 4,000 yards passing. He's got 30 touchdown passes, 2 more rushing. But Hurts has 29 total touchdowns also. He's not that far behind Mahomes, who has 32. Jalen's got 29. He had 26 last year. I don't see – Hurts is just a different cat, man, at the quarterback position. There's no doubt with what he's able to do. But, yeah, right now with 5 games to play, he's my leader in the clubhouse. I don't know if he'll get it. I still think there's kind of a groundswell for Mahomes, and I'm not sure a lot of people across the league are sold on Hurts who vote. It was nice to see him leading the fan vote in the Pro Bowl. I know that doesn't mean a whole lot, but, when the first batch of Pro Bowl ballots came out, it was Geno Smith.
Smith. How about that, by the way?
Geno's having a good year.
Oh, he's having a great year.
Yeah.
72.7% completion percentage, Geno Smith. That's Drew Brees territory.
Yeah. But now the second batch of Pro Bowl ballots came out, and Jalen Hurts is at the top. I guess that game against Green Bay may have influenced some fan vote. That was in prime time, and they saw what Hurts can do and what he did. But, yeah, we'll see if he's going to win the MVP. And I'm sure he would love to win the MVP, but I don't think he cares as much about the MVP as maybe some others. He wants to win a Super Bowl one. He wants to be great, and he would probably think, well, if I don't win it this year, I'll be back next year to try to do it. But he's certainly a unique quarterback who deserves to be in the conversation at minimum, right now, I think he should win it.
Do you know what the biggest drawback is going to be to Jalen Hurts winning the MVP? That would be the Chiefs' remaining schedule. They got Denver this week, who stinks. Houston the week after, who stinks. Seattle, all right. Yeah, he and Geno could go back and forth. He can put up big numbers. Seattle's defense isn't great, but they're okay offensively. Denver again, who stinks. And then the Raiders, who are playing better, but by then will be eliminated from making the playoffs. So, yeah, that smells like about 25 touchdowns for Mahomes over the last 5 weeks of the season, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I give it to Hurts, too. All three of us are in agreement. I said the same thing. He's the MVP right now. Yeah, I kind of like the Chiefs' schedule down the stretch there for big Patrick Mahomes paydays.
If Mahomes throws for 50 touchdowns, I mean, it's going to be hard.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, but he's still 20 away, and maybe he'll be sitting in the fourth quarter of a lot of those games. So throw his 3 touchdowns, and they'll park him on the bench because they're up by 25. Right. So maybe he won't play it.
Good thoughts, Ed Kracz. Always good thoughts with Ed Kracz whenever he jumps in with us here on Birds 365. Try and keep the coughing to a minimum at the game. McMullen's worried about it. Groats is worried about it. Are you a coughing fiend? McMullen's been coughing more than you.
I've been coughing for 16 weeks now, I believe.
Yeah, McMullen's coughing up a storm over there. I'm clear.
Keep your distance.
You were coughing, Ed. The cough was my first indication that Ed's going down.
That was 2 weeks ago. Ed was down.
That was 2 weeks.
I was down pretty heavy from the flu you gave me. But,
exactly.
I'm back, baby. My clear lungs, I'm ready to go.
Keep the mask on this week, buddy. We need you safe and we need you healthy, and we need you again next week here on Birds 365. All right, since we got you, what McMullen and I are giving our score today. You want to give yours today, or you want to hold off till tomorrow and tell Johnny Mac what kind of a lopsided Eagle victory you're predicting?
I think the Eagles will win the game. I think they're going to win like 28 to 14. I just don't like this Giants offense even a little bit. I just don't think they're that good. And the Eagles, I think, will find a way to score points. So I don't know what the line is. I think it's a close line, actually. I think it's like
6.5, 7.
6.5.
If you got 28-14, you got a comfortable cover.
Yeah, I think it'll be a pretty comfortable game. I mean, Hurts has to go up there and prove he can win up there. I mean, last year it's got to be in his mind. He won't admit it, but it's in a lot of Eagles fans' heads. That wasn't,
and that's where he got hurt too.
Yeah, right. And the Giants
try
to do the same
turf.
Yeah, it's a bad turf. It's a hitting defense. But I still think the Eagles win comfortably. 28.
Yeah, Eagles went up there twice last year, and Jalen didn't play well in either game. One he didn't play well, the other one he didn't play. That was the Gardner Minshew game. Needs to have a good MetLife game. We'll see if he gets it. Eddie, good stuff. Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Read him at SI during the week, along with John McMullen, Ed Kracz, here with us on Birds 365. All right, timeout coming. Got a couple more things to run past Johnny Mac, and then we will do a deep dive on the opposition this week. Pat Leonard, who is the Giants beat reporter for the New York Daily News. We had him on the show before the year started for a Giants preview. He was very good with us then. We expect him to be the same. Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News up in about 15 minutes or so here on Birds 360.